Hi guys and welcome. We've all seen the vibe coding demos. You prompt an AI, it produces a beautiful website. It almost feels like magic. Until you actually have to use it. The second you need to fix a typo, update a headline, or hand the site over to a client, the magic disappears. You're stuck digging through AI-generated spaghetti code, hoping you don't break the code just to fix a typo. That's what we're going to fix today by adding a content management system into the mix. This is what we will be building today. Look at this. It's a professional website. It's production ready and it's deployed in production right now. And I think the best part is that it's backed by a content management system. I'll show you exactly what that means in a second. But, we coded this from scratch without writing a single line of code. And then actually only took us a few minutes to do. Let's look at the content management system before we proceed any further. So I have a side by side. Here's my content management system. Like I said, you don't have to code a single line or write a single line of code to get this done. Let's just, for example, let's say we wanted to change the hero title and we wanted to say, your smile reimagined. And then let's just save that. So instead of your smile last sanctuary, let's say we wanted to say your smile reimagined. I'll submit that. And it's been updated. Let's do a refresh here of this page. And there you go. So, it's so easy to change the content of the page. You don't have to get into the code or do anything of that sort. Okay, guys, so let's take a quick look at the tools that we'll be using for this website. We'll actually design website in Google Stitch. We use web data forms to create a content management system. Google Antigravity, we'll use that to actually write the code for the website. We will check in our code just so that it's not only on our local machine. It's actually checked in. We'll check it into GitHub, and then we'll actually deploy the website on Vercel. Let's get into it. So step number one is actually designing the website. And as I mentioned, we'll be using Google Stitch to do that. I'm going to search for Google Stitch here, and let's scroll past the sponsor results. And first one here is Stitch, designed with the AI Google. Click on that, and that will bring you to their, their homepage. You do need a Google account to sign in. I already have a Google account, and I'm, logged into my account, and that's why it's brought me to this page. We will be pasting a very simple prompt here. Don't worry, all the prompts will be in the description. And all we are saying is, can you design a modern single web page with different sections and top navigation for a dentist office? Keep the design modern, sleek, but welcoming. That's it. And we don't need an app. We need a web page. So we click on the web here and then click on generate. And it's going to go off and do its stuff for a bit. Okay, it took about 2 minutes to create the website. And as you can see, it's done a pretty decent job. It's got the top navigation like we asked for. It's got a hero section here, a specialty section. There's about the doctors, testimonials, and then, the address and hours, and it's got a footer there. So pretty much everything you need for a dentist office website, and it's done a pretty decent job. And not only has it created the website, it's also created a style guide. It's got your primary color, secondary color, tertiary and neutral colors. It's got font treatments, what the buttons should look like, what the icons will look like, etc. So it does a pretty thorough job of this. And, we gave it a very simple prompt because we didn't have anything to start with. But if you had if you're making this for a company that already had a logo or a color scheme or something like that, then you would just add that to the prompt. And if you had a logo or something that you wanted to use, you would just upload the logo here and then just tell Stitch to actually use that logo and use certain colors. And if there was a particular section that you wanted in the website, then you would just tell it to, add that section and it would do that. Anyways, now that we have it ready, and I think this is good enough for our example. So let's do one thing. We need to export this. I need to select something. Now that I've selected it, you can see the options. We can export this directly to AI Studio, which is another, Google product. We can create, Figma markups from this. We can export it to Jules, create a zip file, copy it to clipboard, use MCP, create a project brief, or instant prototypes. For some reason, I find that Google Antigravity does a much better job of creating the web pages than AI Studio. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a zip and export that zip. And that zip is going to actually contain a few things. Once we download it, I'll show you what that zip contains. Okay, so I've gone ahead and extracted our zip file. This here is the contents of the zip file. So it contains code.html, which is the HTML for the website, and that includes the style sheet. Then there's a document, a design document here, and then the image of the website itself. Now I've placed all these inside a folder called Design Source, and then I've placed the Design Source folder in a folder called Website with CMS. You can name this anything you want, but this is the folder that's eventually going to contain the code for the website. So step number 1 is now complete. We've designed our website using Drupal Stitch. The next step is going to be creating a content management system in web data forms. We need to do this before we actually code the website. And the reason for that is simple. We will actually provide the endpoint for our content management system to the Google Antigravity prompt to allow it to actually query the endpoint and see what data is actually coming in from our content management system. So let's get started on that. I did a search for web data forms. Let's scroll past the sponsored results and then click on web data forms here. Clicking on the login here. If you don't have an account, you can create an account here. You can sign in with Google or Facebook. I already have an account, so I'm going to sign in. And we're on the dashboard for web data forms. Their forms are actually referred to as data templates. So if you click on the data templates button here, it's going to show you what forms you currently have. So what we'll be creating is a form. It will be what they call a single submission form. So there will only ever be one copy of this form. And I'm going to create it from, let me create the form here. It'll make more sense once you see me do it. Actually, so if we go to new, you get a bunch of predefined templates, data templates here. Click on Content Management System, and they have this basic homepage. So, it's got data it's got space for the hero badge, hero title, hero description, special feature title, special feature description, testimonials, and contact info. And I think that is the main information that we actually want to put into the content management system now. Now, you can put almost everything into the content management system. So almost everything you see on this website, it could come from a content management system. But for the purpose of our current session, we are just going to put this part, the hero headline, hero description, and then the testimonials, and then the contact information, the hours, that sort of stuff. Stuff that you may want to change quite often, right? So that's what we're putting into the content management system for now. But keep in mind, you can create this content management system to do whatever you want, right? So, I mean, instead of using this basic homepage predefined template, you can create a brand new template and put whatever fields you want. So just let me go and show you quickly how you can do that. So if I click on the create new from scratch, it'll bring me down here to create a new data template. Now I can create, you know, I'm just gonna call it that. The thing to keep in mind is that you want to keep the visibility of this form private. So only you have access to change the data here, and you or other users that you allow permission to, only they can change the data here. And then the submission type, we want to keep it single submission. And the reason for that is that this is the single source of truth, and you'll only ever have one form, like one submission for this particular form. And the reason for that is that, you know, if you want to change the data, you go to that form and you update that form. But you cannot have multiple submissions. And then one more thing that you want to do is check this box. It says allow data access via API. We will need API access. And once you have this set, then you can basically drag fields here, hero, you know, and then you can basically create whatever content management system you want. And you can make it as detailed as you want, or, you know, as light or sparse as you want. But for our purposes, we already have a template, a predefined template that suits our purposes fine. And that's the one we're going to use. So I'm going to click on new here, click on here, content management system, basic homepage. Take a look at this. Yep, this is fine for us. And I'm going to click on use this data template. So what it's going to do is it's going to drop this into my data templates. And now, if you look here, it says modify current submission. We will click on that. And it's going to show me an empty because we don't have a submission yet. Then it's going to show me an empty page. And now it's just a question of, you know, going here. So for example, the batch is the gold standard in care. And I'm just going to go back here, and for the hero badge, I'm going to put that. And then, you know, copy and paste, or, you know, put all the details that we want. So we'll be putting hero title, description, and we'll be adding testimonials. Click here, add the testimonial, reading, text, author, subtext, image URL if you want, and then click on save. And then, you know, add as many as you need. And we'll be doing something similar for the address. And then once we have it done, we click on the submit, and now that will save us. Quickly go to, put in all this information. So I've gone and filled up all this information here. As you can see, you know, for example, the hero title, Your Smile Our Sanctuary, is this right here, right? So I've created all the data that we, I'm putting testimonials here. The testimonials are right here. And then I'm also putting, you know, the contact information plus the office hours here. So that's the contact information, and those are the office hours. Now I'm just going to submit this, and it's telling me that it saved my submission. Now, if I go back to data templates here, and I look at this here, one thing we need to, we need to get a couple of things out of the system here. One thing is, how it says show data access via API instructions. You click on that, and it's going to give you exact instructions on how you can, use the endpoint. So one thing we need to do is copy this. I'm going to copy it. and save it because we will need this. We will need to put this in the anti-gravity prompt, right? So copy this. And the other thing you need is your API key. For that, we need to click on group here and click on information and then scroll down to the data access via API and where it says API key and then click on show API key. And then it's going to show you your API key. Just copy that and keep it handy because we'll need both these pieces of information, for our anti-gravity prompt. Actually, there is a couple of things you will need to install to work with our setup, the anti-gravity setup. And those are, you'll need Node and NPM installed. So if you have Node installed, you can just easily check it by saying Node -v. If you get a version number, then that means you have Node installed. And NPM -v, same thing. So obviously I have it installed, but you need to install it if you don't have it. And both can be installed at the same time. Let's just go do a search for install Node here. And it says Node.js. Click on that. And it's going to give you directions for your operating system, how to install Node and NPM. So just follow the directions and install Node and NPM and, install Antigravity right after that. And you should be good to go. Okay, so now that we've actually created our content management system, let's move on to the next step, which is actually coding the website. We'll be creating a Next.js website. Next.js is a React-based framework that can create server-side rendered pages. And I think this would be ideal for a public-facing website. We are going to get Google Antigravity to code the website for us without writing a single line of code. So let's do a search for Antigravity. Scroll past the sponsor results and click on Google Antigravity. And that's their website. So you can download it. This is a software that you have to download. It's free and they have it, should be available for all operating systems. And I already have it, but if you needed to download it, you would click here to download Google Antigravity. Actually, before we get into the coding of the website, let's take a quick look at the prompt that we'll be giving Google Antigravity. And there's a couple of things that we need to remember here. Now, remember when we created our content management system, I had told you that you will need your API endpoint URL as well as your API key. And just to show you, if we go to your content management system, click on the show data access via API instructions, it's going to give you the URL, your endpoint URL. So you can copy that and, save it. We'll be pasting that into our prompt. Where it says your web data forms URL, you will paste that URL that we just copied. And then again, your click on the group information, scroll down to where you see data access via API key, click on show API key and copy this. And then you will be pasting this where it says your web data forms API key. Now we actually have to paste this in the prompt just so that, number one, Google Antigravity or the AI can actually, query this endpoint and see what information it can get from the endpoint. And secondly, so that it can actually code this into our website. So for those reasons, we need to put that here. This is a pretty detailed prompt. Let's quickly go over it. So we're just telling it, we have our design and it's placed in the design source folder. Take a look at that and create a website based on that. Here we're telling it about a content management system and how to fetch data from that. We're telling it to say the API key and endpoint URL in an environment file. And we've added a caching strategy. So what caching does is that you don't, every time you load the website, you don't want your website to go and fetch data from the endpoint. There's a couple of reasons you don't want to do that. One of the reasons is that, it will slow down your website because every time you load the page, it's going to make an API endpoint a call and it's going to slow down the page. And secondly, your data is probably not going to update that often, right? So you don't really need to keep hitting the endpoint. What you need to do is cache the data and only hit the endpoint when you actually need to hit the endpoint. So what we're doing is we're using incremental static regeneration strategy, which basically means that we give it a time, and let's say we give it 1 hour. And for 1 hour, every request is going to come from the cache. And then after that 1 hour, the next request that comes along is also going to come from the cache, but in the background is going to go and fetch new data. So your website loads very fast, and you also keep your data fresh. So let's say we set this to 1 hour, the caching, then at least, you're not hitting that endpoint constantly, right? And it's up to you. You can change that cache time to whatever you want, right? So here we're talking about the caching. And over here, we're telling it that we will be deploying the website to Vercel. So please, make sure that you put everything that we need for Vercel. And then we're saying, please, give us complete instructions on how to run this in dev and how to actually, deploy it to Vercel. And I'm also asking it to provide instructions for checking our code into GitHub. So it's a pretty detailed prompt, but don't worry. You can find the prompt in the description, the video description. Okay, so I've gone ahead and installed Antigravity, and I've opened Antigravity to the folder that we previously discussed with our design source in there. And I am going to paste my prompt, the one we just looked at. I've already pasted my API key and the API endpoint URL. I'm just going to paste it, and I'm going to click send here. And then Antigravity will go off and, do its job. So as you can see here, it's, building the website right now. So I'll come back. It's going to take a few minutes to build the entire website, create the README file, etc., etc. We come back when it's done. So you can see here, it's building up stuff. Okay, so it took a few minutes, but Google Antigravity's finally coded our website. And as you can see, these folders here are populated. The source folder contains most of the source files, but you don't really need to get into any of this stuff. And, as we go along and let's say something isn't working, you can just ask the AI to fix it for you. You don't actually have to necessarily go and fix anything yourself. The most important file for us here is a README file, because we had given detailed instructions to the AI, to Google Antigravity, to make sure that all the steps are outlined here. How do I run it in dev environment? How do I do a production build? How do I deploy it to Vercel? And also how do I check in the code to GitHub? So all those steps are given here, and it's pretty detailed. Let's just quickly go through that. So it's telling me environment setup. It's telling me to copy. So all these commands over here will be run in the terminal. So I already have a terminal open, but if you wanted to open one, you would just go click here and then click on new terminal, and it would open up a window here. And then you just basically copy and paste these commands over here, right? So it's telling me to copy the environment.example file to environment.local. For some reason, it's already done that for me here, because here I can see my environment local file. Probably because it was trying to run the code, because this was the first time and it ran the code. And the next step here, npm install will install all the dependencies. And I can see a node modules folder here, which tells me that this has already been done for me. You can do it regardless. I mean, there's no harm in repeating these commands. So you can go and do an npm install regardless. And here's this, this is dev mode, how to run it in dev mode. It's saying npm run dev, but I recommend running it in production mode, especially because we have a cache mechanism, and, just to test out the cache mechanism, it's probably better to run it in production mode. So for production mode, you have to do a build first, which is npm run build, and then npm run start to actually start the production build. We'll be doing that pretty soon, but let's just go with this file and see what else we have here. That's our GitHub integration details. And this is our deploy to Vercel details. Once we start working on that step, we'll go through that in more detail. So let's quickly go and run this code first. I just want to make sure I show you one thing here. If I go on our local environment file, it says cache true. Let's make this false. This is for testing only. Make sure that cache is always set to true. If set to false, what this means is that every time that your web page loads, it's going to go to the API endpoint, to the content management system, and get fresh data from there. You don't want to do that, because it's, number one, it'll slow down your site, because it has to go to the content management system. And number two, your data is not going to change that often. So currently, what it's going to do is that for 1 hour, it's going to serve everything from cache. And then after 1 hour, the next request that comes in is going to also serve that from cache. But in the background, it's going to go and fetch new data in case something is changed. And, ideally, you should leave this cache set to true. I'm going to set it to false just to show you how, if you make a change on the content management system, how it reflects on the website. So I've set that to false. And now what I'm going to do is npm run build. And the other thing just going to tell you is if it runs a build and everything is successful, that means at least all your code is compiling properly and it's working, right? So the next step is npm run start. And I just want to show you that these are the instructions that I'm following here. So npm run build and npm run start. So I'm going to hit that. And it's telling me that it started up local server. And if I copy this URL and paste it into my browser, I should be able to see the website. There you go. So it's serving up our website right now, and, everything is coded, right? Let's see how it looks in mobile. So if I set it to mobile mode, works perfectly in mobile mode as well. And, seems to be working well. And, just so that all this stuff is coming from a content management system. If we change it in the content management system, this should change. So let's actually test that part out. Let's go to our content management system, go to our data templates, our basic homepage, and then modify current submission. let's just do one thing. Let's add a few exclamation marks here. Submit this. And it's been submitted. Go back to our website. And then let's do a refresh. There you go. So because I had set the cache to false, it's not actually caching it. It's actually going to the content management system every time we do a refresh of the page. Again, like I said, make sure in production, your cache is always set to true. But for now, for testing, and just to show you, how this works, you see how we have the exclamation marks here. So all the data is coming from the content management system. And let's change this back quickly, just so that we have correct data here. And then do a refresh. There you go. So those exclamation marks that I added are gone. And, it seems to be working. So the content management system seems to be working. It's very, very useful, especially if you're building a website for non-technical people and you don't want to compile your website all the time and create a new build. You just want to change the content. So you have it here. And anybody with the permissions goes in here, makes the changes that they need to make, and it gets reflected on your website within the hour. So website stays very efficient. And it's very, loads very fast because of the caching mechanism we have. But it also has, it's also being served up from the content management system. So great. Everything seems to be working just as we expected. One thing that I will be doing is actually going back here. And as I told you, make sure this is always true. So I'm going to set the cache back to true. Okay, now that we actually turned our cache back to true, the way it should be, let's just double check and make sure that this caching is actually working. So first thing, I'm going to hit Control-C to stop the server. And just to be double sure, I'm going to delete this .next folder. Make sure you just, you don't delete any other folder. It's just the .next folder that you delete. We will run another build just to make sure that our very latest environment variables make it into the build. And then we will do npm start. Okay, so now this time the cache should actually be working. And, updates to the content management system should not be reflected immediately on the web page. So let's go here. Let's load up the web page first. Cool, this is what it's showing. This is what we have in the content management system. Let's just do the 3 exclamation marks again. Submit this. And then do a refresh of this page. I'm doing a refresh, but you see the data is not changing, and this is exactly how we want our website to actually function. Only to check for new data once an hour, not every time that we load the page. So seems to be good. Everything seems to be working. And I think we can move on to the next step now. Okay, moving on to the next step now. So we've already done all this stuff. And our next step is to actually check in our code to GitHub. What GitHub is a repository for your code. The first thing is that, let's say something happens to your local hard drive, but as long as you have your code on GitHub, it's safe, right? It also allows you to collaborate with other people. Multiple people can make changes to the code and check it in. And there's a various other reasons, that you should have all your code on GitHub. I won't get into that. That's a different tutorial altogether. But needless to say that GitHub is very, very important part of coding. So let's check in our code to GitHub. The first thing that we'll be doing is, just search for GitHub, find the GitHub homepage, click on that. You might need to create an account if you don't already have an account. I do, so I'm going to click on that. And it's going to take me straight to my account. And we're here. If I click on my little avatar, and then I click on repositories, it's going to take me to my repository page. And we currently don't have any repositories here. So what I need to do for this particular project, what I'll do is I will create a new repository and we will call it website with CMS. And exactly what we call the project, but you can call it anything you want. It's up to you. You can put a description here, which I will not be putting right now. You probably want this to be a private project, not a public project. It depends. But for now, I'm going to keep it private. And I don't need a README file added. I'm going to click on Create Repository. And it's created a repository for me. And not only has it done that, it's actually giving me instructions on how to check in everything. As you recall, however, we had asked Google Antigravity to provide detailed instructions on how to check our code into GitHub. So those are the instructions that we'll be following. Let's go back to Google Antigravity and take a look at these instructions over here. The first thing I'm going to do is shut down the server. So Control-C will shut the server down. There is a quick note here. If you don't already have Git installed on your local system, you will need to install it. If you have a Mac or a Linux system, you should already have Git. On a Windows machine, you might need to install it. It's very simple to do. Just go to Google and search for install Git and follow directions. Anyways, I have it installed here, so we will proceed with these instructions. I'm just going to copy and paste each one of these one by one, and let's see what happens. So I'm basically adding everything into my Git repository here. Second one. Now I'm committing all these files to my local repository. I'm setting a branch here. The next step is actually, it says for us to fill in the address, the URL of our Git repository, the new one that we just created. So if I go back to, I go back to the Git repository here, it actually has the same command here. So, and the location, the URL is already pre-filled. So I will copy this, and then I will go back to Google Antigravity and paste this one here. And that's it. And then the last step is to push all our code into the remote repository. So let's do that. And it's done. So all our code is now also saved in our remote repository here. So let's take a look at it. So right now we were seeing this, but if I do a refresh, if I refresh the page here, you see now it's showing us our repository. So that's it. And our code is now in our repository. Now, every time I make a change to the code, I just need to, synchronize it with the repository. I'll show you quickly how you can do that. So let's say I was to make a little change here. Save this file. And then if I click on this source control, you'll see that, there's a change here. I can add a comment here. And then I can commit and then synchronize our changes. What this does is it takes these changes and, puts it into our remote repository. See, so the last comment I made was testing, and I added that test command there. So it's already gone and, synchronize the repository with our remote repository. So that's it. We have our code checked in to GitHub now. The next step is going to be to actually deploy this to Vercel so that we have a website that's available publicly to everyone. All right, guys. So now we are at our final step. We've designed our website. We've created our content management system. We've created our code, checked in our code to GitHub. And now it's time to deploy our website to Vercel. What this does is that it actually, deploys our current website to the cloud on Vercel, which means that anyone who has a URL can access the website. So far, whatever we've been doing during testing, we've been running the website locally. But now, we will put it up on the cloud, deploy it on the cloud, and anyone can actually access the website. So let's go here and do a search for Vercel, and here we go. I'm already signed in. I already have an account. You might need to create an account. It's a very simple, process. Just create your account. And currently, I'm on my dashboard page. And what we need to do is basically import the project. So let's say I click on import, and it's going to give me a few options here. So we obviously put our code on GitHub. So I'm going to select this, continue with GitHub, and it's going to ask me, it's going to say, hey, do you authorize GitHub to use, this stuff? And I'm going to say, yes, authorize. Okay. And then it's going to show me the screen to install it. And then you can give it access to certain repositories or all. I'm just going to leave all because we only have the one repository, but you should probably only give it access to the ones that you want to give it access to. This one here is a safer option, so you always use that. And then I'm going to click on install here. And now it's saying verify via email. So just me giving access here is not enough. I actually have to verify it. So now I have to go and input my code that has been sent to me by GitHub. I'm gonna click verify, and now my installation is complete. And as you can see, I can see this one here. That's our repository that we just checked into GitHub, and it's showing up here. Let me do the import here. And now it's going to ask me for stuff that, how do we want to install it? So project name, we can leave it as default. It already knows that this is a Next.js application. Root directory, you can leave as default. Build and output settings, you can probably leave them as they are because we're using standard settings here. We do need to put in environment variables. And for that, we'll need to go back to our code here, open our environment local file, and copy everything. And then go back to, and then just paste. Just copy everything and paste it, and everything will show up here, right? And all we have to do next is click on deploy, and it says that it's deploying. It's going to take a couple of minutes, and you can see it here. Maybe not a couple of minutes, but at least, few seconds or a minute. We'll just wait for it to deploy. And it's giving you, the exactly what it's doing. It's giving you a running log of everything that's actually being done for the deployment. And it says, congratulations, you just deployed a new project. And basically, that's it. Now we have deployed it over here. So obviously right now, we have not associated the domain with it. A domain is, like www.google.com. So since we have not associated the domain with it, there's no domain associated. But if you wanted to, you could click here and enable a domain for your website. Right. So now let's go back to our dashboard and we can see this website has been deployed. If I click on this, it'll take me to this particular website. And if I click on this link here, it's going to load up our website. So there we go. Our website is now live. Obviously, this is, the domain hasn't been set. So this is the current domain. You can obviously send it to other people so that they can actually see the website. But at some point, if you want to go live with the website, you'll probably need to have a domain and point that domain to this website, like I showed you. So that's it. We have a running website. We're hooked up to a content management system. Okay, guys, so just to recap, we have designed our website, created a content management system, coded our website, hooked up the content management system to the website, checked in our code to GitHub, and deployed it publicly to Vercel. All without writing a single line of code, done only in a few minutes and for free. So not bad at all. In the good old days, it would have taken, days and days of work, a lot of expertise in a lot of different fields. Anyways, if this brought any value to you, please like and subscribe to the channel and share this video with friends. Thank you. Bye for now.